Captain Daehyun stood on the bridge of the horizon's edge, staring at the data streaming across his screens. After 3 months of deep space exploration, his crew had finally found something incredible. They were not alone in the universe. The signals were clear and unmistakable. Somewhere out there, alien civilizations were talking to each other across the stars. His communications officer, Gu, worked frantically at her station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls as she tried to decode the alien transmissions. Hours passed, then days. Finally, she turned to Daehyun with wide eyes and a trembling smile. She had done it. She had cracked their language. The translations revealed something wonderful. The aliens called themselves the Galactic Council. They represented over 800 different species living together in peace. They had maintained this peace for more than 10,000 years. Wars were ancient history to them. Conflicts were resolved through talking and negotiations. Their military ships were just for show, relics of a violent past they had left behind centuries ago. Daehyun felt hope surge through his chest. Humanity had been alone for so long, developing in isolation while the rest of the galaxy prospered together. Now they could join this peaceful community. Earth could finally take its place among the stars. He composed a message carefully. It spoke of humanity's desire for peace and friendship. It told of Earth's achievements in culture. Kiwoo sent it out into the darkness, aimed at the Council's main communication hub. Then they waited. The response came faster than expected. The Council was curious about these new humans. They sent an ambassador named Vexel from a species called the Centaurians. His ship would arrive at Earth in 2 weeks to make official first contact. Those 2 weeks passed in a blur of excitement. Earth prepared for its first alien visitor. President Taeyong addressed the entire planet, telling everyone that humanity's greatest dream was coming true. Admiral Sunmi, head of Earth's military forces, prepared security protocols. The whole world watched and waited. When Vexel's ship arrived, it was beautiful, sleek, and elegant. It moved through space like a work of art. The ambassador himself was tall and graceful, with blue skin and 4 arms. He spoke through a translator device that made his words sound musical. The meeting started well. Vexel toured Earth's cities and met with world leaders. President Taeyong showed him humanity's achievements in art, science, and culture. But then Vexel asked to see Earth's historical records. He wanted to understand where humanity came from. Admiral Sunmi hesitated. She knew Earth's history was bloody, but honesty seemed important for building trust. She gave Vexel access to everything. All of human history, the good and the bad. The ambassador spent 3 days reviewing the records. When he emerged from his study, his musical voice had changed. It sounded harsh and frightened. He had seen things that terrified him. The world wars with their millions of dead. The nuclear weapons that could destroy entire cities in seconds. The orbital bombardments. The biological weapons. The wars that never seemed to end. But what scared Vexel most was not humanity's past violence. It was the present. Even now, in this age of supposed peace, Earth maintained a massive military. Thousands of warships orbited the planet and patrolled nearby space. Weapons research continued in hundreds of facilities. Soldiers trained constantly for wars that might never come. Vexel sent an emergency transmission to the Galactic Council. He told them that humanity was dangerous. These humans had never stopped preparing for war. They had weapons that could crack planets. They had strategies for fighting battles the galaxy had forgotten thousands of years ago. They were a threat. The council convened immediately. Representatives from hundreds of worlds gathered to discuss the human problem. They debated for days. Some argued that humanity could change, could be taught the ways of peace. Others insisted that such a violent species could never be trusted. Finally, they reached a decision. They would give humanity a choice, but it was barely a choice at all. Earth must completely dismantle its military within 30 days. Every warship must be destroyed. Every weapon facility must be shut down. Every soldier must be discharged. Humanity would have to accept council observers who would make sure Earth stayed peaceful forever. If humanity refused, they would be quarantined. No contact with galactic civilization, no trade, no knowledge sharing, nothing. Earth would be alone again. President Tae-young received the ultimatum with a heavy heart. He called an emergency meeting of the United Earth Assembly. Representatives from every nation gathered to make the most important decision in human history. The debate was intense, but surprisingly short. Nation after nation stood and voted the same way. They would not disarm. They had learned too many painful lessons from history. Peace without the strength to defend it was just an invitation for conquest. They would not make themselves helpless, no matter what promises the council made. The vote was unanimous. Earth would refuse the ultimatum. Admiral Sunmi left the assembly and went straight to military headquarters. She had orders to carry out. The fleet needed to prepare. Earth would not start a war. They would defend their right to exist on their own terms. At the heart of Earth's military power was a ship that had taken 20 years to build. The Use Indomitable stretched 3 kilometers from bow to stern. It carried weapons the galaxy had never imagined. Railguns that fired metal slugs at nearly the speed of light. Fusion missiles with explosive yields measured in gigatons. Point defense systems that could track thousands of targets simultaneously. Armor thick enough to survive nuclear strikes. The Indomitable had never fired its weapons in anger. It had been built as a deterrent, a symbol that Earth could defend itself against any threat. Now it seemed that deterrent would be tested. Admiral Sunmi stood in the Indomitable's massive bridge and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Galactic Council was preparing their response. They would send ships to enforce their ultimatum. They would expect Earth to surrender when faced with overwhelming numbers. They were going to be very surprised. Soon, Dashmi activated the fleet-wide communication system. Her voice reached every ship, every station, every soldier. Her message was simple and clear. Humanity had tried peace. They had offered friendship. The Council had responded with threats and demands. Now Earth would show them why humanity had never stopped building warships. The Indomitable's engines came to life, with a deep thrumming that could be felt through the entire ship. Around it, 99 other warships activated their systems. The Earth fleet began moving toward the edge of Council space. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson it had forgotten long ago. Some species never stop preparing for war because they understand a simple truth. The only way to guarantee peace is to be too dangerous to attack. Captain Daehyun, now commanding the destroyer Soul's Fury, watched the Indomitable lead the fleet forward. He thought about his peaceful exploration mission that had started all of this. He had wanted to find friends among the stars. Instead, he had found a fight. And humanity had never lost a fight they were prepared for. The Galactic Council moved faster than anyone expected. Within days of Earth's refusal, they began gathering ships from across known space. The call went out to over 800 civilized worlds. Send whatever vessels you can spare. Humanity must be contained. Fleet Commander Ralthon of the Astrian Republic took charge of the assembled forces. He was considered a brilliant strategist, though he had never actually fought in a real battle. None of them had. The galaxy had been at peace for so long that warfare was just theory and history. Still, Ralthon felt confident as he watched his fleet gather at the nexus point. 5,000 ships from hundreds of different species. They were beautiful vessels, designed for exploration and ceremony. Elegant curves and bright colors. They moved through space like dancers. The Council had ordered these ships retrofitted with weapons. Energy shields powered up. Plasma cannons mounted on hulls that had never been designed for combat. It was rushed work, but Ralthon believed it would be enough. How could one primitive world stand against 5,000 ships? He sent a message back to the Council headquarters. The fleet was ready. When the humans arrived, they would see an overwhelming force. Surely they would surrender rather than face certain destruction. This would end without bloodshed. The Council members received his message with relief. They did not want war. They had built their civilization on peace and cooperation. But they also believed that humanity's violent nature threatened everything they had created. Sometimes they told themselves force was necessary to preserve peace. Meanwhile, aboard the Indomitable, Admiral Sunmi gathered her command staff. The tactical display showed their fleet of 100 ships against the Council's 5,000. The numbers looked impossible. Commander Hyanwu, her tactical officer, presented his analysis. The Council ships were faster and more maneuverable than human vessels. Their energy shields were sophisticated technology that Earth had only recently begun to understand. Their plasma weapons could burn through most materials, but Hyanwu also noted weaknesses. The Council ships were lightly armored. They relied entirely on their shields for protection. Their weapons, while powerful, had limited range compared to human railguns. And most importantly, their crews had no combat experience. Chief Engineer Yunji gave her report next. The Indomitable was ready for battle. Every system had been checked and rechecked. The ship's massive railguns could fire solid slugs at 30% the speed of light. Each impact carried the energy of a small nuclear weapon. The fusion missiles were armed and ready. The point defense network could track and destroy thousands of incoming threats per second. The armor was perhaps their greatest advantage. Human ships were built to take damage. They were designed to fight and survive in conditions that would destroy more elegant vessels. War had taught humanity to build ships that could endure. Captain Dayan of the Soul's Fury joined the briefing via communication link. His destroyer was small compared to the Indomitable, but it packed devastating firepower. He had been running combat drills constantly during the 3-week journey. His crew was sharp and ready. Dayan voiced the question that bothered many of them. They were about to attack ships crewed by beings who had done nothing wrong. These aliens were not evil. They were just scared. Was Earth right to respond with violence? Admiral Sunmi's answer was firm but not cruel. They were not attacking. They were defending. The Council had issued an ultimatum that would have left Earth helpless. History had taught humanity what happened to helpless civilizations. They got conquered or destroyed. Earth would not allow that fate. Besides, she added, they would give the Council every chance to back down. They would fire warning shots first. They would demonstrate their capabilities. Only if the Council insisted on fighting would Earth respond with full force. The fleet continued toward the nexus point. Fighter pilot Jinsu spent the journey studying the Council. He ran simulation after simulation, learning how they moved and fought. He noticed something important. The alien ships were graceful but predictable. They followed standard patrol patterns and formation protocols that were probably thousands of years old. Human fighters, by contrast, had been designed for chaotic modern combat. They were aggressive, unpredictable, and deadly. Ginsu shared his findings with the other squadron leaders. They began planning their attack runs. Weapons Officer Biora drilled her teams endlessly. She knew that in real combat, hesitation meant death. Her gunners needed to react instantly to fire the moment they had a target lock. She pushed them hard, demanding perfection. Lives depended on their accuracy. 3 weeks after leaving Earth, the human fleet dropped out of faster than light. Travel at the nexus point. Ralph and S sensors immediately detected them. He was surprised by how few ships the humans had brought. Only 100 vessels against his 5,000? It seemed humanity had made a terrible mistake. He opened a communication channel and sent the standard demand for surrender. His voice was calm and reasonable. There was no need for violence. Earth could still accept the Council's terms. Disarm peacefully and join galactic civilization. The alternative was destruction. Admiral Sunmi's response was broadcast to every ship in both fleets. Her voice was clear and cold. The Council had demanded Earth disarm based on fear and prejudice. They had threatened humanity's homeworld. They believed their numbers made them safe. But they had made one critical error. They forgot to ask why humanity never stopped building warships. Earth did not prepare for war because they wanted it. They prepared because they understood reality. Peace without strength was not peace at all. It was just waiting to become a victim. Sunmi gave the Council one chance. Stand down now. Turn around and go home. Or learn why Earth's battleships existed in the first place. Ralphin actually laughed when he heard the message. The audacity was almost amusing. 100 ships threatening 5,000. It was absurd. He ordered his fleet to advance in standard council formation, a beautiful, symmetrical pattern designed to intimidate and overwhelm. The council ships moved forward in perfect coordination, thousands of vessels creating geometric patterns in space. It looked impressive. Ralphin was certain the humans would lose their nerve and retreat. Admiral Tsunemi watched them come. She waited until they crossed into maximum range of the Indomitable's railguns. Then she gave a simple order. Fire one round. Warning shot. The railgun fired with a deep boom that resonated through the entire ship. The metal slug accelerated down the 3-kilometer barrel and shot out into space at 90,000 kilometers per second. It was moving so fast that Council sensors could barely track it. The slug hit the first Council ship dead center. The energy shields flared bright for a fraction of a second, then failed completely. The slug punched through the ship like it was made of paper. It continued through 2 more ships behind the first. Destroying all 3 in a single shot, the screaming started immediately. Council ships broadcast their panic and confusion across all channels. They had never seen anything like this. Their shields were supposed to protect them, but kinetic weapons at these speeds carried too much energy. The shields could not absorb the impact. Ralphin stared at his tactical display in horror. 3 ships gone in an instant. His confidence evaporated. He ordered his fleet to return fire, hoping that concentrated plasma beams would overwhelm the human flagship. Thousands of energy weapons fired simultaneously. The space around the Indomitable lit up like a star as plasma beams converged on the battleship. The human shields flared under the assault. Alarms sounded throughout the ship as the energy levels spiked dangerously high, but the shields held. The Indomitable's point defense network came online, intercepting most of the incoming fire before it even reached the shields. Automated turrets tracked and destroyed plasma bolts with ruthless efficiency. Then the Indomitable returned fire in earnest. Not just one railgun, all of them. Every weapon system on the massive battleship opened up at once. The slaughter began. The Battle of Nexus Point lasted 18 minutes from first shot to final surrender. In that brief span of time, the Galactic Council learned what humanity had spent centuries perfecting. War was not just about having weapons. It was about knowing how to use them with ruthless efficiency. The Indomitable's railguns fired in continuous streams. Each shot traveled too fast for Council ships to evade. Their elegant vessels, designed for beauty and speed, shattered under the kinetic impacts. Shields failed. Hulls ruptured. Ships that had sailed peacefully for centuries became spinning debris in seconds. The fusion missiles came next. They streaked out from the Indomitable and the other human ships, leaving trails of fire across the darkness. When they detonated, the nuclear explosions created miniature suns. Council ships caught in the blasts simply vanished, vaporized by temperatures that matched the cores of stars. Captain Dahin's destroyer, the Soul's Fury, moved through the battle with deadly precision. His navigator, Lieutenant Eugene, plotted intercept courses that put them in perfect firing positions. His weapons officer, Ensign Sung-ho, never missed. Every shot found its target. Daehyun watched the tactical display as his ship accounted for its 47th kill. He felt no joy in it. These were living beings dying out there. But he also knew that hesitation would cost human lives. His orders were clear. Disable or destroy any ship that posed a threat. The Council fleet tried to adapt. Ralphin ordered his ships to spread out to avoid giving the humans concentrated targets. But spreading out meant breaking formation, and breaking formation created chaos. Ships collided with each other. Communication channels became overwhelmed with panicked voices. Commanders who had never experienced combat made fatal tactical errors. Some Council ships tried to run. Their faster engines should have let them escape easily. But human targeting computers predicted their flight paths perfectly. Railgun rounds caught fleeing ships from thousands of kilometers away. Running just meant dying tired. Fighter pilot Jinzu led his squadron into the heart of the enemy fleet. His predictions had been correct. Council ships had no effective point defense against human fighters. They were too slow to track the small, fast-moving craft. Jinsu's squadron wove through the battle space like predators among prey. They targeted engine sections and weapon systems, crippling ships without destroying them when possible. But when Council ships refused to power down, Jinsu and his pilots showed no mercy. Their missiles and cannons shredded hull plating and critical systems. 147. Council ships fell to Jinsu's squadron alone. He felt sick about it later, but in the moment, he was simply focused on his mission. Stay alive. Complete the objective. Protect his wingmates. Aboard the indomitable Commander Heianwu, coordinated the entire battle with calm efficiency. He tracked every human ship and every enemy vessel. He predicted Council movements and allocated targets to whichever human ship had the best firing solution. His tactical decisions were perfect because he approached war as a mathematical problem to be solved. Engineer. Youngji kept the Indomitable running at peak performance despite the massive power demands. The railguns required enormous energy for each shot. The shields constantly absorbed incoming fire. The point defense network ran continuously. But Yunji's careful management kept every system operational. Weapons. Officer Bora and her teams performed flawlessly. The endless drills paid off. They fired, reloaded, and fired again without hesitation. The Indomitable alone destroyed over 300 Council ships in those 18 minutes. It was not something Bira would ever be proud of, but it was what her duty demanded. Admiral Suni watched it all from the command chair. She took no pleasure in the destruction, but she also felt no guilt. The Council had forced this confrontation. They had threatened Earth with isolation and worse. This was the consequence of their choice. As the battle progressed, the Council fleet began to disintegrate. Not just physically, but organizationally. Ship captains stopped following orders. Some tried to surrender individually. Others just shut down their weapons and drifted, hoping to be ignored. A few brave or foolish ones kept fighting until they were destroyed. Fleet Commander Ralthon, watching his carefully assembled armada fall apart, made a desperate decision. If they could not win through superior numbers or tactics, they would try something the humans might not expect. He ordered all remaining combat-capable ships to ram the Indomitable simultaneously. If they could sacrifice themselves to destroy the human flagship, perhaps it would break Earth's will to fight. 300 ships turned toward the Indomitable and accelerated to maximum speed. It was a suicide run, but Ralthon believed it was their only chance. The massive human battleship was powerful, but surely it could not stop 300 ships all attacking at once. Commander Heinwu calmly reported the incoming vectors to Admiral Sunmi. He calculated that even if the Indomitable shot down 90% of the attacking ships, enough would get through to cause serious damage. The flagship might survive, but casualties would be severe. Sunmi made her decision instantly. She would not allow a single Council ship to reach ramming range. She ordered Yunji to divert maximum power to the forward weapons. She told Biora to target the largest concentrations of incoming vessels. Then she gave the order that ended the Battle of Nexus Point. Full salvo. Everything they had, the Indomitable unleashed hell. Every railgun fired continuously. Fusion missiles launched in massive waves. Energy weapons that had been held in reserve came online and added their power to the barrage. The point defense network, designed to stop incoming fire, was repurposed to target ships instead. The space around the Indomitable became a zone of absolute death. Nuclear fires bloomed continuously as missiles found their marks. Railgun rounds created cones of destruction where anything in their path simply ceased to exist. The energy weapons carved through ship after ship. The other human vessels joined in. 99 warships all firing at the incoming ramming attempt. The concentrated firepower was overwhelming. Council ships exploded by the dozens. Debris fields expanded rapidly, making it harder for the surviving ships to navigate. Within 2 minutes, the ramming attempt was over. Not a single Council ship reached the Indomitable. The space around Earth's flagship was filled with wreckage and radiation, but the battleship itself was untouched. Fleet Commander Ralthon stared at his screens in disbelief. His flagship was crippled and burning. Of his 5,000 ships, fewer than 200 remained intact enough to fight. The human fleet had lost exactly 3 destroyers, sacrificed when they intercepted particularly dangerous groups of ramming ships. He transmitted an unconditional surrender. His voice was broken and defeated. There was no shame in surrendering to an enemy this powerful. The shame was in not recognizing that power earlier, Admiral. Sunmi accepted the surrender but kept her fleet at battle stations. She knew this was just the beginning. The Council would not accept this defeat easily. They would gather more ships, develop new tactics, and try again. But Earth had made its point. Humanity could defend itself. They were not helpless primitives to be pushed around by the galactic community. They were warriors who understood war in ways the peaceful galaxy had forgotten. As news of the battle spread across the galaxy at light speed,
actions varied.
Some species were horrified at the violence. Others were impressed by humanity's capabilities. A few quietly began developing their own military forces, realizing the Council could no longer protect them. The Galactic Council itself descended into chaos. Council Chair Mervyn called for immediate mobilization of all remaining forces. A fleet 10 times larger than what faced Earth at Nexus Point. They would crush humanity before this threat could grow. But Ambassador Vexthal, who had started this whole crisis, raised a terrifying question during the emergency session. If the Indomitable and 100 ships could destroy 5,000 vessels in 18 minutes, what other weapons did Earth possess? What remained hidden on humanity's homeworld? The question haunted everyone who heard it. The galaxy fractured in the days following the Battle of Nexus Point. The Galactic Council, which had maintained unity for 10,000 years, suddenly found itself divided. Some species wanted immediate revenge against humanity. Others called for negotiation. Many simply withdrew from Council affairs entirely, no longer trusting the organization to protect them. The Centaurian Collective, Ambassador Vexthal's people, led the calls for total war. They had been humiliated by Earth's display of power. Their pride demanded retaliation. But even among the Centaurians, opinions were split. Vexthal himself shocked everyone by breaking ranks with his own government. He requested permission to travel to Earth. He wanted to speak directly with human leaders. His superiors denied the request, but Vexthal went anyway. He resigned his position and chartered a private vessel. When he arrived at Earth 2 weeks later, President Taeyang agreed to meet with him. They sat in a simple conference room. No ceremony or formality. Just 2 beings trying to understand each other. Vexthal spoke first. He admitted his fear. Humanity terrified him and his entire species. The capacity for organized violence that humans displayed went against everything the Council believed in. But he had spent weeks thinking about the battle. He had studied human history more carefully, and he had realized something important. The galaxy had not achieved peace by becoming peaceful. They had achieved peace by forgetting how to fight. For 10,000 years, no one challenged them because no one nearby was strong enough. They had grown soft and complacent. They believed their way was the only way. Then humanity appeared, still sharp and dangerous from their violent history. The Council's first reaction was to demand humans become like them. But Vexthal now understood that was wrong. Sometimes the capacity for violence was what prevented violence. Sometimes being dangerous was the only way to stay safe. President Taeyang listened carefully. When Vexthal finished, Taeyang spoke about Earth's history. He explained how humanity had nearly destroyed itself multiple times. They had learned painfully and slowly that peace was precious. But they had also learned that peace required strength to maintain it, he showed. Vexthal something that few outside Earth had seen. Recordings of human peace negotiations throughout history. Not the battles, but the talks that came after. The compromises. The treaties. The slow work of building trust between former enemies. Humanity knew how to make war. Yes. But they also knew how to make peace. While Vexthal and Taeyang talked, Council's militant factions were assembling another fleet. This time, they learned from their mistakes. They studied Earth's tactics. They reinforced their ships with better armor and kinetic shielding. They drilled their crews in combat maneuvers. They gathered 15,000 vessels, every warship the galaxy could spare. Grand Admiral Thelvex of the Centaurian Armada took command. Unlike Fleet Commander Ralthan, Thelvex was a scholar of military history. He had spent his entire life studying ancient wars, even though he never expected to fight one. Now his knowledge would be tested. Thelvex studied recordings of the Battle of Nexus Point obsessively. He analyzed every human tactic and movement. He believed he found humanity's weakness. They were willing to sacrifice for strategic advantage. They traded ships for position. They took damage to inflict more damage in return. His plan was to exploit that. He would spread his fleet thin, forcing the humans to divide their forces. Then he would concentrate overwhelming firepower on isolated human ships, make them pay for every victory until they bled out. Earth's intelligence networks detected the gathering fleet. Admiral Sonmi was recalled to Earth for strategic planning. She brought her command staff with her. They needed to decide how to respond to this new threat. The debate in the military headquarters was intense. Some generals argued for a preemptive strike, hit the Council fleet before it finished assembling. Others wanted to wait and defend Earth directly. Using the planet's orbital defense networks, Admiral Sunmi proposed something different. Something that would demonstrate Earth's power so completely that the galaxy would never threaten them again. She called it Operation Damocles. She would take the full Earth fleet, all 13 Indomitable-class battleships, and meet the Council fleet in open space. But this time, they would not fire a shot. Not unless the Council attacked first. They would simply demonstrate what humanity was capable of. Show the galaxy that Earth could annihilate any fleet anywhere at any time if they chose to. Make the choice for peace so obvious that even the most militant Council members would accept it. President Taeyong approved the plan. It was risky. If the Council fleet attacked and overwhelmed them, Earth's main defense would be gone. But Taeyong trusted Sunmi's judgment. More importantly, he understood what she was trying to achieve. Not just military victory, but psychological dominance. The full Earth fleet assembled for the first time in history. 13 massive battleships, each one equal to or better than the Indomitable. 50 destroyers like the Soul's Fury, 200 frigates and support vessels, thousands of fighters. It was the largest concentration of military power humanity had ever gathered. Captain Dae Hien, given command of the battleship Soul's Fury after his performance at Nexus Point, stood on his bridge and marveled at the sight. 13 3-kilometer warships in formation, each one capable of destroying fleets single-handedly. Together, they represented humanity's total commitment to defending itself. The fleet journeyed to the Kronos Expanse, a vast, empty region of space that the Council had chosen for their gathering point. Grand Admiral Thelvex had deployed his 15,000 ships in a massive spherical formation. When the Earth fleet arrived, they would be surrounded from all directions. When Admiral Sunmi's fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel, Thelvex felt confident. The humans had brought more ships this time, but they were still outnumbered more than 10 to 1. His spherical formation would envelop them. They could not possibly defend against attacks from every direction. Simultaneously, the Earth fleet deployed in a simple line formation. 13 battleships side by side, their support vessels arrayed behind them. They held position at maximum weapons range and made no threatening moves. Thelvex opened communications. He expected threats or demands. Instead, Admiral Sonmi gave him a simple warning. 1 hour. The Council fleet had 1 hour to withdraw. Earth would not fire unless fired upon. But if the Council attacked, humanity would show no restraint. Thelvex actually laughed. Even with their powerful battleships, the humans were outnumbered 100 to 1. They were surrounded. They had no chance. He believed this was a desperate bluff. He gave the order to attack. 15,000 ships began accelerating toward the Earth line. Plasma weapons charged. Missile tubes loaded. It was an awesome sight. Enough firepower to devastate entire solar systems, all focused on one fleet. Admiral Sunmi watched them come. She waited until they had committed fully to their attack. Then she gave the order that changed galactic history. All ships. Activate Ragnarok Protocol. The 13 battleships synchronized their targeting systems in less than 2 seconds. They calculated firing solutions for every council ship simultaneously. Their railguns, which had been charging for the entire hour-long standoff, reached maximum power. Then they fired 15,000 ships. 15,000 perfectly calculated shots. Each council vessel took a single railgun round through their engine compartment, not through the crew sections, not through the reactors. Just the engines. It took 47 seconds to disable the entire. Council Fleet Grand Admiral Thelvex watched in horror as his tactical display went dark. Ship after ship reported engines destroyed. They were dead in space, drifting helplessly. Their crews were alive and unharmed. Their ships were intact except for the destroyed engines. But they could not move, could not fight, could not even retreat. The humans had not destroyed them. They had neutered them, made them helpless with surgical precision that should not be possible. 15,000 perfect shots in under a minute. Commander Hyenwu broadcast on all channels. His voice was calm and professional. He explained that the council ships were disabled but intact. Crews were safe. Earth would transmit towing vectors to the nearest council stations. Rescue ships could collect the disabled vessels at their leisure. Humanity had made its point. They could have killed everyone, could have annihilated the entire fleet. Instead, they chose mercy. But it was mercy that demonstrated absolute dominance. The message was clear. Earth could destroy any fleet, anywhere, whenever they wanted. The only reason council ships survived was because humans allowed it. Fighter pilot Jinsu, flying patrol around the disabled fleet, saw something that would haunt him forever. A Centaurian cruiser, its hull breached by the precision railgun strike, crew visible through the damaged plating. They were staring at his fighter with absolute terror in their eyes. He realized in that moment what humanity had become. They were the monsters that nightmares were made of. The thing lurking in the dark that could kill you instantly if it chose. Every species that saw this battle would fear humanity forever. Captain Daehyun had the same realization aboard his battleship. His communications officer, Jiwoo, reported that broadcasts from the disabled council ships were full of prayers and pleas. The aftermath of the Battle of Kronos Expanse changed everything. The Galactic Council, which had governed hundreds of worlds for thousands of years, collapsed under the weight of its own failure. Species that had relied on the Council for protection suddenly realized they were vulnerable. The old order was broken beyond repair. Ambassador Vextel, still on Earth when news of the second battle reached him, worked with President Taeyang to create something new. They called it the Galactic Concordat. It was different from the Council in fundamental ways. Every species would keep their sovereignty. Every species had the right to defend themselves with military forces. No one could be forced to disarm, but the Concordat also created mutual defense treaties. If one member was attacked, others would come to their aid. Disputes would be resolved through arbitration first, but force was allowed as a last resort. It was not perfect peace. It was practical peace, backed by the understanding that aggression had consequences. The proposal spread across the galaxy. Hundreds of species signed within weeks. They recognized that this new system acknowledged reality rather than denying it. War would always be possible. But by making everyone strong enough to defend themselves, war became too expensive to consider except in the most desperate circumstances. Admiral Sunmi, her mission complete, resigned from military command. She had proven what she needed to prove. Earth could defend itself against any threat. Now she could work on building peace instead of just preventing war. President Taeyang appointed her as Earth's ambassador @large. Her first mission took her to the Astrian Republic. Their homeworld had been devastated by civil war 3 centuries ago. They had abandoned military force after that war, believing that weapons only led to violence. But without the Council to protect them, they were vulnerable to any species with hostile intent. Sunmi met with Astrian Chancellor Kyrson in the capital city. The buildings were beautiful, but crumbling. The Astrians had focused on art and culture while their infrastructure decayed. They had no way to defend themselves if someone attacked. Soon, Dashmi made an offer that surprised the Chancellor. Earth would provide military protection through a mutual defense treaty. In exchange, the Astrines would share their advanced understanding of energy manipulation and their cultural achievements. But more than that, Earth would train Astrine volunteers in self-defense. Not to create soldiers, but to teach them how to protect their own world. It was revolutionary. Not conquest. Not subjugation. Partnership between equals, backed by strength that made exploitation pointless. Kyerson accepted immediately. Within months, First Astrine Defense Force was training under human instructors. The Centaurian collective remained hostile. They refused all diplomatic contact with Earth. Grand Admiral Thelvex, stripped of rank after his failure at Kronos Expanse, became a vocal critic of human expansion. He warned anyone who would listen that humanity was dangerous and could not be trusted. But engineer Yunji, now serving as a technical advisor to the Concordat, made an unexpected connection. She met a Centaurian scientist named Velmara at a technology conference. Velmara was studying human engineering, trying to understand how Earth built such powerful warships. At first, their conversations were purely technical. Yunji explained human design philosophy. Ships built to take damage and keep fighting. Redundant systems. Heavy armor. Velmara shared Centaurian theories on energy efficiency and elegant design, but over weeks, their discussions became more personal. Velmara admitted something that surprised Yunji. The Centaurians hated humanity because humans reminded them of what Centaurians used to be. Thousands of years ago, before they joined the Council, Centaurians had been fierce warriors. They had conquered a dozen worlds before choosing peace and cooperation. Humanity's arrival forced Centaurians to confront their own history, to remember that they too had been violent and dangerous once. It was easier to hate humans than to acknowledge that similarity. Yunji listened carefully. Then she asked a simple question. If Centaurians had evolved past their violent nature, why could humanity not do the same? Why assume humans would always be warriors? Velmara had no good answer. The conversation planted a seed. She began speaking with other Centaurians, asking the same question. Slowly, attitudes started to shift. Maybe humanity was not a permanent threat. Maybe they were just a young species still learning. Velmara eventually helped arrange a meeting between President Taeyang and the Centaurian High Council. It took place on a neutral space station, jointly built by humans and Centaurians as a symbol of possible cooperation. High Counselor Arnsith led the Centaurian delegation. He was blunt with Taeyang. Humanity terrified them. Humans had turned warfare into an art form. How could anyone trust that Earth would not eventually use that power to conquer? Taeyang's response was equally blunt. Conquest was expensive, bloody, and ultimately pointless. Earth did not want other species' worlds. They had their own planet and were beginning to colonize nearby systems. What humanity wanted was trade, knowledge, culture, the ability to learn from other species and share their own achievements. Yes, Earth was prepared for war. That preparation was exactly what allowed them to pursue peace. Because they were too dangerous to attack, they could focus on building instead of constantly defending. The conversation lasted hours. They discussed philosophy, history, fear, and hope. Finally, Arnsith asked the question that would define humanity's future. What happens when someone threatens Earth again? Will humans show the same restraint? Taeyang's answer became the founding principle of the new galactic order. Earth would always prefer peace. They would always seek diplomatic solutions first. But they would never again be told they must disarm to deserve respect. If that made them dangerous, so be it. Sometimes being dangerous was the only way to remain free. The Centaurians did not immediately embrace humanity, but they stopped opposing them. It was a start. 6 months after the Battle of Kronos Expanse, representatives from 847 worlds gathered on Earth. The first time aliens had visited humanity's homeworld in such numbers. Captain Dae Hayan, who had started this entire journey aboard the Horizon's Edge, served as master of ceremonies. The Treaty of Stars was signed in a ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. Its key provisions reshaped galactic civilization. all species retained the right to maintain military forces. Aggressive war was prohibited, but defensive wars were supported by all Concordat members. No species could be forced to disarm, and humanity agreed to share military technology and training with any species that requested it. Admiral Sun Mi signed on behalf of Earth's military. She added a personal clause that became famous. Any species threatened by external forces could request Earth's protection. Humanity would respond. It was not a promise of peace. It was a promise of security through strength. 10 years passed. The galaxy transformed. 70 species rebuilt their military forces with Earth's assistance. War did not disappear. 3 regional conflicts erupted, but they were contained and resolved through Concordat arbitration backed by the threat of intervention. Captain Dahin, now Admiral and Commander of the Indomitable, patrolled the frontier with a mixed crew. Humans, Centaurians, Astrines, and a dozen other species working together. His operations officer was Commander Velmara, the Centaurian engineer who had helped bridge the divide between species. Fighter pilot Jin Su, now a squadron commander, trained the first generation of alien fighter pilots. They struggled with the aggressive tactics humans considered normal, but they learned. Species that had forgotten how to fight were remembering. Not to conquer, but to defend. President Taeyong served a second term. Each morning, he received briefings from Earth's intelligence services. Trade was flourishing. Scientific cooperation was producing breakthroughs. Cultural exchange programs brought understanding between species, but the briefings always included one footnote. Earth maintained 47 battleships now. Construction continued on even larger vessel classes. When his new advisor, former Commander Hyeonwoo, asked why they kept building warships during peacetime, Taeyong's response echoed through diplomatic circles. Peace was not the absence of conflict. Peace was what happened when everyone understood the cost of starting one. The test of that philosophy came sooner than expected. On the frontier of known space, an unknown species from beyond the galactic rim attacked a colony world. The colonists were a mix of 17 species, including both humans and Centaurians. Admiral Dae-Hyen received the distress signal aboard the Indomitable. He did not hesitate. The battleship and its battle group accelerated toward the threatened world. As they entered faster-than-light travel, Dae-Hyen recorded a message broadcast to all Concordat members. A member world was under attack. Earth was responding. He called for support from allies. And to the attackers, he gave one warning. They had one chance to withdraw. Humanity did not start fights, but they finished them. Across the galaxy, hundreds of warships altered course to join the Indomitable. Not just human vessels. Centaurian cruisers, Astrine destroyers, ships from dozens of species all converging on the colony. Not because they feared Earth's power, but because they had learned what humanity tried to teach from the beginning.